Parenting is complex. Parenting is really, really complex. And if you are caring for a child living with a disability, that complexity can increase exponentially. It's really like a lot. The complexity of parenting, so too the complexity of things like financial planning and estate planning. And we're going to talk about some of those things today. Our guest is Carol Willis. She is the Director of Estate Planning at BMO Private Wealth, and she joins us today from Ottawa. Hello there.
Hello, how are you, Bruce?
I am well. There is a lot for anybody to get a handle on when it comes to financial planning. For those caring for kids with a disability, that it can present real challenges in the present, and it can present both challenges and questions about the future, in particular the long-term future. Can you kind of characterize the world for parents who have this circumstance and the additional layer of stress that they deal with because of all that goes into this?
I can, and it's something I deal with all the time. Um, when you have someone that's dependent on you and they have a special need or disability, the biggest concern in your mind is how are they going to cope when I'm no longer here? How are they going to deal with their day-to-day life? How are they going to pay for what they need? Who's going to be there to help them? And can I trust who's there to help them? How will I know there's enough funds to carry them through for however long they may need it? So it's a huge worry, and people lose a lot of sleep over it.
And people in this circumstance may have lots of money. They may earn lots of money. They can do all the things, or they may be really struggling to make ends meet, just like many millions of Canadians. I want to start with one of the things that's universal for people in this circumstance, and that's the RDSP. So
Mhm.
it is something that exists that not everybody knows a lot about. What's your commercial for opening this registered account for people who've got a child living with a disability?
Just do it.
Just do it. Just
Just
go to
do
a
it.
bank, doesn't matter where, go to a credit union,
Yes,
sign up.
and
And
just
why?
do it because when you put funds into that account, it grows in there tax sheltered for your disabled beneficiary. So you can put up to $200,000 in over your lifetime, and actually anybody can contribute to it. So it doesn't have to be all on the parents. It can be grandparents, aunts and uncles, friends, and they can put up to 200,000 in there until the child turns 50.
Hmm.
Actually 60 for the actual contributions. And then there's also government benefits that come from it in the terms of grants and bonds.
Hmm.
So, they can actually, depending on their income, your family income, or once they're over the age of majority, their own income, they can be eligible for additional funds of, up to $70,000 in grants, up to $20,000 in bonds. So it's an amazing way for people to put money aside to help their disabled children or family members out into the future in a very tax efficient way.
There's also something called a Henson Trust. This one, not for everybody. For whom does a Henson Trust make sense?
So that's a great question. I often find, when people are thinking about leaving an inheritance for the next generation where there's a disabled beneficiary, this is where the Henson Trust makes sense. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount of money. I would say anything over about $100,000 makes sense to put into a Henson Trust. Why a Henson Trust? Why do we do this? Because most of our provinces, all of our provinces, offer provincially funded benefit programs for people who have various disabilities, whether they're physical or mental. If you receive money in your own hands through an inheritance, it can put you offside
Hmm.
for the benefits that those programs provide to you. So there's always income and asset threshold tests for these kinds of programs, and you want to be sure that you don't just land a lump sum of money into a disabled individual's lap that now denies them the benefits that they may otherwise have had. So putting it in a trust means it's actually owned in a different structure, but the disabled person has the benefit of it. So no personal ownership means they still keep eligibility to their benefits.
Every single grown up with a kid needs a will. I am evangelical about this. It should be universal. Everybody needs one. even times five more important for those caring with for a child with a disability for all the reasons one can imagine. What are some of the questions that parents think through as they're thinking through what that estate plan looks like? And I ask, I'm one of five kids.
Hmm.
We all got the same inheritance, very simple. I can imagine for families where they've got one child who is functioning in a neurotypical way or, does not have a disability and another who does, they might have a different view on how that inheritance is best allocated.
That's a really good point. So it depends on the child's disability. Are they likely to need more resources in the future than the rest of your children put together? So if that's the case, you might want to do an uneven allocation of assets to what you're leaving behind for your disabled child. On the other hand, if you've done some other things like set up an RDSP, there's already a pool building there. So maybe in that case, maybe you treat your children more equally. But so you think about what other resources are out there for the children. What government benefits are there? Is there an RDSP in place? Will my child need more of my resources than my other children will? And who's going to administer this? Who's going to look after the estate as executor and potentially as trustee or guardian for my disabled child after the fact? So, and those are different roles. Trustees look after financial assets, real estate assets for a disabled person. A guardian is someone appointed by the court who may do that, but also will look after their personal welfare.
Yeah, breakfast. Someone's making breakfast. The executor's
Yes,
not doing that.
exactly.
We've covered a couple of do's. What are some don'ts? I'm sure you've seen some really heartbreaking stories over your career of things that people with the best intentions either did or didn't do that put them in more challenging circumstances than they otherwise needed to be in.
Exactly. So I'll give you a big one. Be careful what you do with your registered accounts. A lot of people, especially if they've been employees a lot of their life, they have big RSPs, tax-free savings accounts, and we've all been taught wrongly, in my view, to avoid probate at all costs.
Mm.
So they name beneficiaries on all of those accounts. But if you need money to flow into a trust, a Henson Trust for your disabled child, those funds have to come into your estate, not be designated out to beneficiaries. I recently had a situation where there were three children. One of them had a disability, was receiving provincial benefits. The will set up a Henson Trust, but mom had been told by everyone she talked to, oh, avoid probate and just designate out those registered assets to the kids. When she passed away, which she recently did, there was nothing left in the estate basket to fund that trust for her disabled child. So there was no Henson Trust. And to make it worse, he received those designated assets directly, which disqualified him for his provincial benefits. So that's a big don't. Yeah.
That must have just been heartbreaking for everybody.
It was. And it's like letting the horse out of the barn, or a genie out of the bottle. You can't stuff it back in once it's out.
Financial planning is a very difficult task. And for families who have this incremental cost associated with care for their child, and maybe it's minimal, maybe it's massive. Who knows, depending on what they're dealing with, where they are, geographically, all the things. What advice would you have for helping people make some very real and tough trade-offs on how to spend in the present and how to prepare for the future?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head is with a financial plan. So, as an estate planner, my raw material in helping clients is that financial plan because it's a little bit of a roadmap out to the future. It shows clients how their assets behave over time, given some assumptions about how they want to live their life. How much do they want to spend in retirement? How much will they need to live? How much will their housing cost? Do they want to travel? You'll be able to see how much they have left. If it's not enough, and they can see that, then they're able to make some informed choices about how maybe to redirect some of their assets into savings for their disabled child. So it's such a great roadmap. It's not infallible. It's not a crystal ball, but it is a really good start at being able to see what we've got left at the end, what are tax liabilities going to eat up of that, and what can we do with the rest.
One of the things we deal with at Credit Canada all the time is a very low level of awareness. People don't know that you can pick up the phone and call a nonprofit credit counselor for free anytime. What do people not know about this world of disability? I'm using that term very, very broadly. That if we could snap our fingers and have
Hmm.
everybody just know that this resource was available, maybe it's a government service, maybe it's a book, maybe it's like, what are the resources that we just wish every parent had?
Unfortunately, they're kind of disjointed. But if you can find an advisor, a legal advisor or an accounting tax advisor who has training in disability situations,
Yeah,
that's the golden ticket.
it's a
So
specialty.
it is a specialty. And I always say to people who are looking for accountants and lawyers, shop around. Go onto the website, see what they say their specialties are. If they have one, they'll tell you. And it'll be there. And look for people who do specialize in disability law and disability tax, because they will be the best people. They have already done the work of consolidating all this information for you so that you don't have to go to all the different sources yourself. They are the source for you.
I can feel for listeners who this is particularly relevant for, I can feel and hear the sigh of relief. You are a calm presence, you have answers, there is hope. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thanks, Bruce.
Carol Willis is Director of Estate Planning at BMO Private Wealth. She joins us today from Ottawa to talk about some of the do's and don'ts, some of the things to think about for parents who have kids with disabilities.